When I arrived in India in January 1975, my luggage was lost. It was the middle of the night and I didn't know which way to turn, just like when Srila Prabhupada got off the Jaladuta and he didn't know whether to turn left or right. It was kind of the same for me. You know, when your luggage gets lost, you're feeling some distress. So I walked out, and I was in Delhi airport. I walked out of Delhi airport, and this is the old airport, Palam Airport, and the cows were all sitting around. And it was an instant love for India, I felt. It was this beautiful warm evening. Well, warm comparative to London. Don't forget, I've come from London. And the cows were there, and I thought, wow, this is a really magical place. I've made the right decision to come and find Srila Prabhupada in India. Now, of course, I'm in Delhi, and then we found out Prabhupada was in Bombay. So how to get, with no luggage, from Delhi to get to Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. So we had to wait a week for the luggage because we were on some cheap Syrian Arab airlines that only came to Delhi once a week. So we waited for our luggage for 1 week, and then we were advised to go on this, I think it was called second-class chair car. They said, oh, it'll be so comfortable, second-class chair car, AC. So first of all, the AC was actually freezing, and the chair was upright, so it's an overnight train, upright in a freezing cold train. So by the time we arrived in Bombay, and we passed through Mathura, and the person I was with said, oh, that's where Krishna was born, because we knew little in those days. And I thought, well, why aren't we getting off the train here? Let's get off here. I didn't know how far Bombay was, and Delhi and all these things. But we stayed on and we went to Bombay. And then we didn't have any Indian money to catch the taxi from the train station to get to Bombay, to Juhu. So we had to go change money. And finally, after all this stress of getting to see Srila Prabhupada, we walked in the temple, and there's what looked to me like an oversized armchair, big orange, big armchair. And there, almost dwarfed by this big chair, sitting, glowing, with Srila Prabhupada. And at that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision to leave London and come to Bombay. And actually, when I look back on my life, I said Bombay, with maybe the exception of my Padayatra years, Bombay was actually the best year I spent in my life. It was such an ecstatic place because everyone was so enthusiastic to serve Srila Prabhupada. And of course, Srila Prabhupada was constantly coming and going. And we had this wonderful rasa when Srila Prabhupada would leave Bombay, which he did quite a few times in the time I was here. We'd all go to the airport, and in those pre-security days, we'd go up to the roof and we'd watch until Srila Prabhupada's aeroplane disappeared in the sky and all the chemtrails and everything were gone. We'd watch until Prabhupada was gone, and then we'd be sad. But we used to say it was like the gopis when Akrura took Krishna from Vrindavan. They all stayed and watched until the dust from the wheels of the chariot had died down. So we used to do that. We'd watch the airplane, and it was gone. And we'd be sad but happy at the same time because we'd been with Srila Prabhupada, but sad because he'd left. And actually the first time Srila Prabhupada actually spoke to me was in Bombay. And in those days, Bombay, Prabhupada lived in an apartment on the third floor, or was it, well, second floor, depending whether you're counting it the English or the American way. But it was the new ones they built on the roof. They'd built these new apartments on the roofs of the apartments. And I used to go up there and clean it, actually with Salman Mongol, my dear friend, and we used to clean Prabhupada's apartment. And one time, I mistold timed my descent down the stairs. And as Prabhupada was coming up the stairs, I was going down the stairs. So we met on a landing. So I jumped into this lady's kitchen, you know, the door was open, I just jumped in and I paid my obeisances. And Prabhupada stopped, so when I got up, Prabhupada was looking down at me. And he said to me, "So, you are chanting Hare Krishna?" And I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "Jai!" And he continued on up to his rooms. And as I've reflected back on my life, as we all must do, and all the lessons learnt, I could understand that really the important thing to Srila Prabhupada is that we're chanting Hare Krishna. And another time I was trying to be helpful, so I left the light on. It must have been a dark morning because I left the light on in Srila Prabhupada's room. And Prabhupada sent the message not to waste electricity. You know, I was under this illusion that Prabhupada would walk in and everything would be ready for him, but of course Srila Prabhupada was perfectly capable of switching the light on. So that was one instruction from Srila Prabhupada. It was actually really wonderful being in Bombay, and one time Prabhupada was going to Ahmedabad to start the preaching there. I don't know if there was no land, I don't think, at that point. And he was going from Vrindavan, and some Bombay devotees went to meet Prabhupada there, and I was very lucky because I went with my dear now departed god sister Aditya, and she took the actual little Radharasa Bihari, the little deities, she took them, and I was to help her look after them, and she was the pujari. So we went, and there was a big pandal program. And it was April, so it was really hot. I remember they brought round limkas for all the devotees. And they put a limka in front of Srila Prabhupada, and they put a limka in front of all the devotees, and it's like boiling hot, and it was late in the day. We're tired because we've been on Harinam. And I kept looking at Srila Prabhupada because we knew we couldn't drink the limkas until Srila Prabhupada drank his. I keep looking, "Prabhupada, please drink the limka, I'm dying here." I'm looking over at Prabhupada, and finally Prabhupada, you know, he took from the bottle without touching his lips, and he drank some limka, and then that was it. Everyone reached and drank the limkas. It was nice. But actually before that, when Prabhupada arrived at the house where he was staying, we all went. And Prabhupada, I saw how charming Srila Prabhupada was, because he said to it was Gujarati people, and he said, there's two special births. He said, Gujarati is a special birth, and Bengali is a special birth. And he said, Gujarati is a special birth because Krishna's father was a Gujarati. But it was like, you know, it was to charm the crowd, and I thought, wow, he really knows how to win the crowd over. A very charming person, Srila Prabhupada, actually, beyond charming. And something else happened, I'm trying to think. Oh, there's another thing I learned at that. Prabhupada was speaking English. And then at one point, he handed it over to he handed over to Jashamati Nandan Prabhu, who of course was Gujarati speaking. But I think it was more than a language thing. You could argue, oh, it was because of language. But I think Srila Prabhupada was empowering his disciples to go out and do this mission for him. And I think that's a very important lesson, that we don't try to control, but we try to empower, so everyone feels that they can do something for Srila Prabhupada. I think that's a very important lesson. So the Bombay devotees, we had so much fun in Gujarat, going out on Harinam and being with Prabhupada at the Pandal at night. It was really wonderful experience. One time, Prabhupada came back, and he'd been in Mauritius, and he'd had a car crash in Mauritius. And he told the story how just before the crash, he'd taken his stick and he'd put it so that the weight of his body was on his walking stick. So when the impact came, he had some support from the stick. It prevented further injuries. But he rolled up his dhoti and he showed us his swollen knee. And you know, you can imagine, you know, Srila Prabhupada, materially so much older than than I. And having to see Prabhupada's swollen knee, it was so painful for the devotees to see that Srila Prabhupada had hurt himself. And another time when I was in Srila Prabhupada's room, I was holding Radhakund's daughter, Sundari, because Radhakund was cooking for Srila Prabhupada. So I was holding, and immediately Prabhupada came and he said, "Where's her mother?" I mean, he knew whose child it was. Of course, you could argue there weren't many children, but he recognized, and I said, "Oh, she's cooking for you." And Prabhupada was very pleased. But it was such a personal thing, you know. He sees the baby with the wrong lady and he wants to know, well, is the mother okay? You know, where's the mother? I thought that was really, really nice. Actually, I got my Brahmin initiation here. And I was still a young devotee. So I made this collection of presents for Srila Prabhupada. And I wrapped them all up in this hot pink tissue paper. In those days, it's not like now you can buy anything. In those days, we were living almost like in medieval England, you know. It was like really, people were poor. A lot of people were poor here. There was the whole fishing village, and children would wear vests, and there'd be more holes than vests. And they used to wear these little shorts. There were a lot of poor people around. And there weren't many facilities, but that's bringing me to another story. Let me finish the when I got my Brahmin story. So I took these things up. They were wrapped. There was like sandalwood pulp in a silver bowl, sandalwood oil with some money wrapped around, and it was about 4 or 5 articles. And Prabhupada was opening them, and he looked up, and he said, "So many things." But the funny thing is, at that point, I really started to feel like maternal towards Srila Prabhupada. I felt like he was a little boy getting his presents, and I was in the maternal role. And I realized years later that Srila Prabhupada had said that the most important thing for brahmachari life, I heard this in a class, is that men see all women as their mothers. Not just call them Mataji, but see them as their mothers. I think there's a big difference. And that's what Prabhupada was doing. I was like the old mother, and he was like the young boy. It was quite an amazing experience. But then the mood immediately, when he started to teach me Gayatri Mantra, the mood changed. He was back to being the guru, I was a disciple. But for that few minutes there, it was different. It was really, I felt very special. One of the most special moments of my life, actually, to be alone there with Srila Prabhupada, giving him gifts, me getting a bigger gift, Gayatri Mantra. And to go back to how I was on about the poor children, there were a lot of poor children on Hare Krishna land. They lived next door in some like fisher huts, you know, straw roofs. They lived at the back of the land in like just make-do houses, not in the flats. There were also children in the flats, in the apartments, but I'm on about living like against the wall with some plastic, and they were poor people. So I started a school, because that was my profession previously. I worked with children. I started a school for poor children. And of course, I didn't speak Marathi, which was a bit of a problem, but I found a nice lady who helped me. She spoke Marathi, and we clothed and we fed the children, and we gave some little lessons. And we used to have brilliant kirtans. So one day, Srila Prabhupada heard the kirtans, and he said, "Who's that chanting?" And he was told, well, there's a little Marathi school going on, and the children are chanting. So he asked to see the children. So the next day, I got the children all dressed up, tilak, and we went up the stairs to see Srila Prabhupada. Now, can you imagine? This is a person who's running, practically single-handedly in one sense, a whole worldwide mission. But he has time to meet these little, very, very poor children. Poor children, no social status whatsoever. And yet, you know, his room would be full of important people, full. But Prabhupada still had time for the little man. And I think that's one of the things that really makes Srila Prabhupada unique, that he gave Krishna consciousness available for the whole world, irrespective what's the word I want here? Irrespective of, you know, your creed, caste, nationality, whatever we want to call it. And I think that's a very important point that I learned from Srila Prabhupada. Krishna Consciousness is for everyone. So anyway, to get back to the story, because I'm kind of interjecting my learning. We went in, and they'd all drawn pictures of Krishna. Now, some of them were quite young, and their pictures were quite indistinctive. So Prabhupada took the pile of pictures, and he's kind of looking at them. And at one point he said, "What's this?" Because I hadn't put the best ones on the top. I've learnt now, if you're taking pictures, put the best ones on the top. I just put them any old way. You learn lessons. And Prabhupada was kind of, and I said, "Oh, it's Krishna, Srila Prabhupada." And he's, you know, and he looked at the pictures though. And then we left. We didn't want to distract Prabhupada for too long. But it's such a wonderful story that Prabhupada had time for everyone. I love that. Now, another time, I can't remember, it was Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance day. It was a special day. And we decided to cook the 108 offerings. Now, bear in mind, Juhu Temple, at that point, one slab of concrete with some tiles on top, a few bits of metal with a corrugated tin roof, no walls. Oh, there was one wall, but there was blinds for the rain, turquoisey blue color blinds. And then of course the deities had a brick building, just a small square brick building where they were attached to this little temple room. And at the back was the kitchen. Now, when you think kitchen, you think stainless steel, you think marble, you think pots, you think burners, nothing, you know. There was a deity kitchen which was very small, and it had 2 gas rings and 1 kerosene. You know, those pumpy ones. And there was the devotee kitchen. Now that was interesting. It was made of a very rough brick, so, you know, not so high, maybe waist high or so, with the cement sticking out of the bricks, no plaster or anything. Then there was a gap, no windows, because don't forget, they're cooking on fire. They've got to let the air of the fire, the smoke escape. And then there's a straw hut. I mean, straw huts and fires, it's a wonder we didn't ever have a big fire when you think back. But so and somehow from that facility, or lack of facility, we managed to make this 108 preparations for Bhaktisiddhanta. So then Hamsaduta comes down to Arctic and sees all the preparations in front of Radharasa Bihari in their old temple room. And he says, "We have to take them to see Srila Prabhupada. He has to see them." So on the top of the lids from the big pots, we put all the preparations on these lids. And we go over to where Srila Prabhupada's apartment block is. But the lids were wider than the stairwell. The lids are this wide, the stairwell's like this, so we just start trying to get all these preparations up the stairs to show Srila Prabhupada. I don't know how we did it. Sav Mongol, my friend, was with me. I don't know how we got them up there. It was tilting, but we got them up, and Srila Prabhupada looked over them, and he said, "Mark everyone, this movement is nothing without its feasts." So that's another thing I learned from Srila Prabhupada, the importance of prasadam. So those are some of my memories of Srila Prabhupada in Bombay, Juhu.